Welcome back to Vietnamese Vixens. Today's story is different from what you might expect. This isn't about a young man chasing romance or getting his heart broken by a bar girl. This is about Gerald, a 72-year-old pensioner from Manchester, England, who found himself trapped in a life that had become nothing more than a slow countdown to death. He wasn't scammed. He wasn't deceived. He was simply invisible, irrelevant, forgotten by a country that had moved on without him. But sometimes the most profound transformations happen when we least expect them, when desperation finally outweighs fear. Before we hear Gerald's story, I want to ask you, where are you watching from right now? Drop your location in the comments. And if you've ever felt stuck, invisible, like life was just happening around you instead of to you, hit that subscribe button. Because Gerald's journey might just change how you see your own possibilities. Now, let me share his words, exactly as he sent them to us. I'm writing this from my apartment in Ho Chi Minh City, and I need you to understand something right from the start. A year ago, I was waiting to die. Not actively, not dramatically, but in that quiet British way where you just accept that the best parts of your life are behind you and what's left is management. Managing the cold, managing the bills, managing the loneliness, until eventually you just stop managing, and that's that. My name is Gerald Thompson. I'm 72 years old. I spent 43 years as a quantity surveyor in Manchester, raised 2 children, buried my wife Margaret 3 years ago, and watched my life shrink down to the size of a 1-bedroom council flat in Wythenshawe, where the heating barely worked and the walls were so thin I could hear my neighbors telly through the plaster. The thing about being old and poor in England is that nobody tells you directly that you're a burden. They just stop seeing you. You become background, a statistic, an inconvenience shuffling through Tesco with your shopping trolley, counting pennies at the self-checkout, while the queue builds behind you, and you can feel their impatience like heat on your neck. Winter 2024 was when it really hit me. I remember the exact moment. It was a Tuesday morning in January, absolutely pissing down with rain, and I was standing at my kitchen window watching the water run down the glass. My state pension had come in the day before, £998 for the month. I'd already paid my rent 640 quid for the shoebox that smelled perpetually of damp and the previous tenant's cigarettes. That left me £358 for everything else. Everything. Food, electric, gas, water, council tax top-up, phone, the prescriptions that weren't covered, the bus fare to see my GP, the occasional pound for a coffee if I was feeling reckless. I had a spreadsheet. Can you imagine? 72 years old, and I had an Excel spreadsheet tracking every single pound. Because if I didn't, I'd run out before the month did. Tesco value beans. Reduced price bread at 8 p.m. when they marked everything down. Heating on for 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the evening, no matter how cold it got in between. I'd sit there in my coat, watching the government-mandated smart meter tick through my precious electric, wondering when exactly my life had become about survival rather than living. Margaret used to handle the money. She was good at it, better than me, always finding little ways to stretch things. After she died, cancer, quick and vicious, 6 months from diagnosis to grave, I discovered we'd been more skint than I'd realized. She'd just hidden it better, made it feel less desperate. Without her, the walls closed in. The silence in that flat was physical. You could drown in it. Our kids, they tried. They did. But Rachel's in London working some high-pressure job in finance, married with 2 little ones, no time, no space. James is in Bristol, barely making ends meet himself, driving for Deliveroo between failed auditions. They'd call on Sundays, duty calls, asking how I was in that voice people use when they don't really want the honest answer. I'd say fine. Always fine. What else could I say? That I'd stood in front of the mirror that morning and realized I'd become my father, that same defeated slump. That same look of a man whose purpose had been extracted and nothing pumped back in to replace it? The loneliness was worse than the poverty, if I'm being honest. You can manage being skint. You learn the tricks, the budgets, the discipline. But loneliness, that's insidious. It gets into your bones. I'd go whole days without speaking to another human being. The girl at the Tesco checkout didn't count. She was scanning my items on autopilot, already looking past me to the next customer. I tried going to the pub once a week, made it a Thursday tradition, pint and a half at the local. But even there, I was wallpaper. The younger men didn't see me. The few blokes my age were locked into their own little groups, decades-old friendships I couldn't penetrate. I'd sit in the corner nursing my pint, pretending to watch the football, feeling more alone in a crowded pub than I did in my empty flat. Then Frank died. Frank lived 2 doors down, 74, widower like me. We'd nod in the hallway sometimes, exchange pleasantries about the weather. I didn't know him, not really. Just another old man, warehoused in the same building. They found him after 2 weeks. The smell finally alerted someone. Heart attack, they said, quick and alone. And he'd laid there on his kitchen floor for 14 days before anyone noticed he was gone. That shook me more than Margaret's death, if I'm being truthful. Because Margaret's death was tragedy, we'd had 46 years together, raised children, built a life. Her death meant something, hurt people, left a gap. But Frank could have been me, lying there for 2 weeks, slowly decomposing while the world carried on outside. No one noticed, no one checked. He simply stopped existing, and it took 14 days for anyone to realize. I understood him, though. I understood it completely. Not suicide, exactly. I don't think Frank killed himself, but that slow surrender, that creeping sense that maybe it's just easier to stop trying so hard. What was I trying for exactly? Another winter in that freezing flat, another year of spreadsheets and Tesco value, and Sunday phone calls with my kids who loved me, but didn't know what to do with me? Another decade of being invisible? The thing about depression in old age is that it doesn't feel dramatic. It's not this acute crisis. It's just gray. Everything's gray. The Manchester sky, the walls of my flat, the days that blurred into each other without distinction. I wasn't sad exactly. I was nothing. Empty. Going through motions because stopping felt like it would take more energy than continuing. I started doing this thing where I'd walk through Manchester city center just to be around people. Pathetic, really. Thousands of people rushing past. Everyone with somewhere to be, someone to meet, something important happening. And there I was, nowhere to go, no one waiting, just killing time until time killed me. I'd watch the young couples, the families, the business people in their smart clothes, talking urgently into their phones, and I felt like a ghost, already dead but still walking around out of habit. My sister Helen called one Sunday in March. She lives in Devon, sees me maybe twice a year. We were making small talk, her garden, her grandkids, the usual, and she mentioned offhand that her friend Maureen's brother had retired to Thailand, living on his pension, having the time of his life. Can you imagine? She said, laughing. At 68, moving all the way to Asia? I laughed too, said something dismissive, something about being too old for adventures. But after we rang off, I couldn't stop thinking about it. Too old for adventures. Was I, though? Or had I just accepted that narrative because it was easier than challenging it? That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I stayed up late, opened my laptop, the one James had given me 3 Christmases ago that I barely used except for checking my pension payments. Started Googling, retire in Asia on UK pension. Thousands of results. YouTube videos of British pensioners in Thailand, Vietnam, Philippines, showing their apartments, their monthly expenses, their lives. Real people. People my age, people who'd been where I was. The numbers stunned me. Genuinely stunned me. These men were living in proper apartments, modern places with air conditioning and gyms, for half what I was paying for my damp shoebox in Wythenshawe. Eating out daily, fresh food, restaurants, for less than I spent on reduced-price ready meals from Tesco. Getting health care, dental work, prescriptions for a fraction of UK costs. And they looked happy. Actually happy. Tanned, smiling, surrounded by people, doing things, living instead of just existing. I spent 3 days watching videos, reading blogs, forums, expat groups. Vietnam kept coming up, specifically Ho Chi Minh City. Safe, they said. Affordable. Welcoming. Good healthcare. Easy visa process. The kind of place where a British pensioner could actually stretch his money, live with dignity, maybe even comfort. The fear was immense, I won't lie. I'm 72. I barely left England except for package holidays to Spain with Margaret decades ago. I don't speak Vietnamese. I don't know anyone there. What if I got sick? What if I got scammed? What if I made this enormous leap and discovered it was all a fantasy, that those YouTube videos were lies, and I'd end up even more alone and skint, just in a foreign country where I couldn't even read the signs? But then I'd look around my flat, dot the stained ceiling, the window that didn't quite close, letting in the cold and the noise from the street. The mattress that had developed a valley in the middle, the emptiness, the gray, crushing emptiness. And I'd think, what exactly am I protecting by staying? This isn't a life worth protecting. This is existence, maintenance, waiting. I thought about Frank, lying dead on his kitchen floor for 2 weeks. I thought about my own kitchen floor, how long I'd lie there before anyone noticed. Rachel would call on Sunday maybe, get no answer, probably think I'd gone to the shops or forgotten my phone. She'd try again Monday, maybe Tuesday. By Wednesday, she might be concerned enough to call the building manager. 4, 5, 6 days minimum, maybe longer. I made a decision sometime around 3 a.m. on a Thursday morning in April. Not a brave decision, not a confident one, a desperate one. I was going to book a ticket to Ho Chi Minh City, 3-month tourist visa, exploratory trip. I wouldn't tell Rachel or James until the first was already there. Couldn't handle their worry, their objections, their entirely reasonable concerns about their elderly father flying off to Asia alone. I'd just go. If it was terrible, I'd come home. If it wasn't, well, we'd see. Booking the flight was surreal. My hands actually shook clicking the purchase button. £640 return, Vietnam Airlines, departure early June, nearly 2 months rent. Mad money to spend, truly mad. But I kept thinking, what's the point of dying with money in the bank? Margaret and I had always planned to travel more in retirement, see the world together. Cancer took that dream. But maybe it didn't have to take mine too. The weeks before departure were strange. Part of me expected to bottle it, to cancel, to accept that this was a ridiculous fantasy for a man my age. But another part, a part one thought had died with Margaret, felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not hope, exactly. More like curiosity. What would it be like? Could it actually work? Could I, Gerald Thompson, quantity surveyor, Manchester born and bred, 72 years old and invisible, could I actually do something different with whatever time I had left? I packed light. 1 suitcase, summer clothes bought cheap from Primark, basic toiletries, my medications, copies of my prescriptions. Didn't tell my neighbors what would I say. Didn't have a leaving party who would come. Just quietly arranged for my rent to be paid from my account. Set up automated bills, left a note for Rachel with my building manager in case of emergency. The night before my flight, I couldn't sleep. Lay in that flat for the last time, maybe the last time. Maybe I'd be back in 3 months with my tail between my legs, listening to the couple next door, arguing through the thin walls, the traffic noise from the street, the familiar sounds of a life I'd worn like an uncomfortable coat for too long. Morning came. The taxi arrived. I took one last look at that flat, and I felt nothing. No nostalgia, no sentimentality. It had been a waiting room, nothing more. A place to mark time between Margaret's death and my own. The plane lifted off from Manchester Airport on June 3, 2025. I watched England disappear beneath the clouds. Gray, drizzly, exactly as I'd left it. 14 hours stretched ahead of me, and I had no idea what I was flying towards. Terror and something else. Something I was afraid to name because naming it would make the disappointment sharper if this all turned out to be a mistake. But as the plane climbed higher, as Manchester became a memory below me, I realized something. For the first time in 3 years, I wasn't just waiting to die. I was moving towards something. Even if it was a disaster, even if I came crawling back, I was moving. And movement, any movement, felt like resurrection. The heat hit me like a physical thing when I stepped off the plane at Tan Son Nhut Airport. Not the pleasant warmth of a Spanish holiday, but thick, wet heat that wrapped around you like a blanket soaked in warm water. It was 11 p.m. local time, still 32 degrees, and I was wearing the sensible long trousers and button-up shirt I'd thought appropriate for international travel. Within seconds, I was sweating through everything. The airport was chaos. Beautiful, terrifying chaos. Families everywhere, children running, people shouting in Vietnamese, signs I couldn't read, announcements I couldn't understand. I followed the crowd like a sheep, clutching my passport, my heart hammering. This was a mistake. A massive, stupid mistake. What was I thinking? Flying to the other side of the world at my age, alone, to a country where I didn't speak the language or know a single soul. Immigration was surprisingly quick. The officer, a young woman who looked about 20, glanced at my passport, stamped it without expression, waved me through. That was it. I was in Vietnam. Getting a SIM card took longer. The woman at the shop spoke minimal English. I spoke no Vietnamese. We communicated through pointing and phone calculators. 300,000 dong for 30 days of data. I handed over what I hoped was the right notes, all of them looking the same to me, all covered in Ho Chi Minh's face. She smiled, set up my phone, sent me on my way. First transaction complete. I'd been here 20 minutes and hadn't been scammed yet. Small victories. I'd arranged a grab bike to my service department in District 1. Found the driver outside, middle-aged Vietnamese man, kind face, limited English. He helped me strap my suitcase to the back of his motorbike, handed me a helmet that smelled of old sweat and other people's heads, gestured for me to climb on behind him. I need you to understand, I'd never been on a motorbike in my life. We don't do that in Manchester. You drive a car or take the bus or walk. Motorbikes are for teenage boys and midlife crises. But here I was, 72 years old, climbing onto the back of a stranger's bike in Vietnam at midnight, gripping his shoulders like my life depended on it because it absolutely did. We pulled out into traffic, and my entire body clenched. Motorbikes everywhere. Hundreds of them, thousands maybe, weaving between cars, running red lights, going the wrong way down one-way streets, entire families on single bikes, father driving, mother behind him, holding a toddler, older child squeezed in front. No rules, no order, just flow, somehow. This river of metal and people that moved like a living organism. I was certain I was going to die, genuinely certain. We'd be T-boned by a truck, or rear-ended by another bike, or simply veer off into a lamppost. But the driver navigated it all with casual expertise, one hand on the throttle, occasionally checking his phone, completely relaxed, while I held on so tight my knuckles went white. And then something shifted. Maybe 30 seconds in, maybe a minute. The terror didn't disappear, but it was joined by something else. Exhilaration, the warm wind on my face, the lights of the city streaking past, the aliveness of it all. People everywhere at midnight, on a Wednesday. Cafes full, street vendors cooking, shops open. Life happening in a way that Manchester had forgotten, or maybe never knew. I started noticing things instead of just bracing for death. The smell of grilled meat from a street stall. A group of teenagers laughing on a corner. An old woman, older than me, pushing a cart of fruit, still working, still part of the world. We arrived at my building on Lethanton Street, modern tower, glass and concrete, security guard at the entrance who waved us through. The driver helped me with my suitcase. I tipped him what I hoped was appropriate. He smiled and nodded and drove off into the night. I stood there on the pavement, sweating, jet-lagged, overwhelmed, and thought, I'm actually here. I actually did it. The apartment was nicer than I'd expected. Nicer than anywhere I'd lived in years. Studio, but a proper size, maybe 30 square meters. Modern kitchen, induction hob, full-size fridge. Bathroom with a rain shower that actually had pressure. Air conditioning that worked properly worked, not the pathetic wheeze of a British wall unit, but actual cold air that transformed the room in minutes. A double bed with clean sheets. A small balcony overlooking Lethanton Street. And all of it for 15 million dong a month. 580 pounds, including utilities, water, internet, building security. Less than my council flat in Wythenshawe, significantly less. And about 1,000 times nicer. I stood on that balcony at 1 in the morning, still in my sweat-soaked travel clothes, looking down at the street. It was alive. At 1 a.m. on a Wednesday, the street was alive. Motorbikes still flowing past, a cafe across the road still full of people, a vendor on the corner selling something from a cart, customers queuing. In Manchester at this time, the streets would be dead except for drunks and the occasional taxi. Here, life continued. The city didn't sleep, didn't shut down, it just kept going. I should have been exhausted. I'd been traveling for 20 hours, but I was wired, adrenaline or fear or something else entirely. I took a shower, stood under that rain head for 15 minutes, letting the day wash off, changed into shorts and a t-shirt, lay on the bed with the aircon on, staring at the ceiling, listening to the city through the open balcony door. What had I done? Had I saved myself or made everything exponentially worse? Sleep came eventually, fitful and strange. I woke at 6 a.m. to sunlight and street noise and the disorientation of not knowing where I was for a solid 30 seconds. Then it all came back. Vietnam, Ho Chi Minh City. I was here. This was real. I needed coffee. Needed to get out, see the area in daylight, start figuring out how to actually live in this place. I dressed shorts, t-shirt, sandals, already learning grabbed my phone and wallet, and ventured out into District 1 on a Thursday morning. The heat was already building, even at 6:30, but it was different in daylight. The street was packed with motorbikes heading to work, but also with life. Food vendors setting up their stalls, school children in uniforms, old people doing Tai Chi in what looked like a small park. The architecture was a mad mix. French colonial buildings crumbling beautifully, Communist-era concrete blocks, modern glass towers, all smashed together without any planning or sense. It shouldn't have worked, but somehow it did. I walked slowly, trying not to look like a lost tourist, failing completely. An old Vietnamese woman sitting on a tiny plastic stool outside a cafe caught my eye, smiled, gestured to another stool. "Coffee?" she seemed to be asking. I nodded, sat down on this ludicrous tiny stool that was maybe 6 inches off the ground, my knees up by my ears, feeling ridiculous. She disappeared inside, came back with a small glass of dark coffee with condensed milk at the bottom. Café Swada, I'd learn later. Vietnamese iced coffee. She said something in Vietnamese, I had no idea what. I said thank you, she smiled. The language barrier was complete, but somehow it didn't matter. I tried the coffee, it was extraordinary. Strong, sweet, cold, exactly what my jet-lagged body needed. I drank it slowly, watching the street, watching the city wake up. The woman I'd later learn her name was Lan, sat on her own stool, occasionally serving other customers, mostly just watching the world go by. We didn't speak, we just existed in the same space, and it was more companionship than I'd felt in months. When I finished, I asked how much. She held up 3 fingers. 3 what? 3,000 dong? 30,000? I had no idea how money worked here. I pulled out a 50,000 dong note, about £1.40, held it up questioningly. She laughed, shook her head, made change from a little box, handed me back a 20,000 dong note. So 30,000 dong for that incredible coffee. 85 pence. I'd been paying 3 quid for terrible coffee at Cafe Nero in Manchester. Something unlocked in my chest right then. Sitting on that tiny stool, drinking that coffee, having this small interaction with this Vietnamese woman who didn't speak my language but had welcomed me anyway. Maybe this wasn't a mistake. Maybe this could actually work. The next few days were a blur of discovery and adjustment. I learned to cross the street. You just walk slowly and steadily and let the motorbikes flow around you like water. Stop or hesitate and you'll get hit, but keep moving and somehow it works. I found a local market, Ben Than, massive and overwhelming, every possible thing for sale in a maze of stalls. Bought a Vietnamese phrasebook, started trying to learn basic words. Hello, thank you. How much? Numbers, please. Sorry. The basics of being a polite visitor. I found a place selling banh mi Vietnamese sandwich for 35,000 dong. Under £1. I bit into it and nearly wept. Fresh baguette, still warm, pâté and pork and pickled vegetables, and cilantro and chili. Flavors I'd forgotten existed. In Manchester, I'd been living on bread and margarine, and whatever reduced-price ready meals I could find. Here, I was eating food that tasted like food, like actual ingredients prepared with care, and it cost less than a Tesco meal deal. I found a faux place near my apartment, family-run, plastic stools and low tables, no English menu. I pointed at what someone else was eating, held up one finger, smiled hopefully. They brought me a huge bowl of pho bo beef noodle soup. 60,000 dong. £1.70. It was the best thing I'd eaten in years. Fresh herbs, rice noodles, slow-cooked broth that had actual flavor. Tender beef. I ate every drop, sat back feeling full and satisfied for the first time in recent memory. By the end of the first week, I'd worked out my costs. Rent £580, already paid for the month. Food, eating out twice a day at local places, maybe £50 a week, 200 a month. Coffee at Lands every morning, 20 quid a month. Grab bikes for transport, 10, 15 quid a week max, 60 a month. Utilities included. Phone data, 8 quid, entertainment, museums, occasional beer, maybe 100. Total, about £970. I was under budget. Living better than I had in years, eating fresh food daily, going out, doing things, and I was under budget. My pension was £998 a month, and I had money left over. For the first time since Margaret died, I had money left over. But it wasn't the money that hooked me. The money was important, sure, made everything possible. But what really got me was how I felt. I went back to Lan's coffee stall every morning. She started recognizing me, would have my coffee ready when she saw me walking up. We'd sit in companionable silence, occasionally trying to communicate through gestures and phone translation apps. She showed me photos of her grandchildren. I showed her photos of Rachel and James. She brought me Vietnamese snacks to try weird dried fruits, sticky rice things, mystery items I couldn't name but gamely attempted. She'd laugh at my facial expressions. I'd laugh at her laughing at me. It was friendship, genuine friendship, despite having maybe 50 words of common language between us. I found a group of expat retirees meeting at a cafe in District 1 every Tuesday morning. British, Australian, German, American, all men roughly my age, all with similar stories. Mike from Birmingham had been in Vietnam 4 years, renting a nice apartment in District 3. John from Sydney, here, 5 years, married to a Vietnamese woman now, completely integrated. Klaus from Hamburg, retired teacher, 2 years in country, learning Vietnamese, volunteering. They welcomed me instantly. No judgment, no questions about why I'd left the UK, just acceptance. We'd meet, drink coffee, share information, good doctors, visa advice, where to find Western food when you got homesick, which areas to avoid, how to handle the bureaucracy. They became my friends. Actual friends. People who'd check if I missed a Tuesday, who'd invite me to dinners, who'd include me in weekend trips to the Mekong Delta or the Kyu tunnels. Mike said something to me one Tuesday that stuck. We were talking about the UK, about why we'd all left. He said, "Mate, I couldn't afford to live properly in the UK anymore. The pension doesn't stretch. Everything's expensive, everything's cold, everyone's miserable. Here, I live like a king on the same money. But honestly, it's not even the money. It's that people here still see you. You're not invisible. You're not just a burden, a drain on resources. You're a person. You're Teacher Mike to the kids I volunteer with. I'm Coach Mike at the expat football thing. I'm Mike to the woman who runs the faux stall. Mike to my neighbors. Mike to my friends." In Birmingham, I was nobody. Just another old pensioner taking up space. I understood exactly what he meant because I was living it. I'd become someone again. The vendors on my street started recognizing me, calling out greetings. The security guard at my building learned my name, would ask how my day was. My English conversation students I'd started volunteering at a cafe that ran free English practice sessions called me Teacher Gerald, asked about my life, invited me to their family dinners. I went to one, met Thu's parents and grandmother, was treated like honored guest despite being able to communicate almost nothing beyond smiles and thank yous, and this is delicious. They fed me until I couldn't move, showed me photos, translating their questions about England and my family and my life. I belong somewhere. After 3 years of being no one, nowhere, invisible and irrelevant, I belong somewhere. People knew my name. People smiled when they saw me. People wanted to talk to me, spend time with me, hear my stories. I mattered again, not as a quantity surveyor, not as somebody's husband or somebody's father, but as Gerald, the British man learning Vietnamese, trying new foods, teaching English conversation, integrating into the community. One morning in September, about 3 months after I'd arrived, I was sitting at Lan's stall drinking my coffee, and she said something to me in Vietnamese. I didn't catch it all, but I got the gist. Something about me looking happy, looking younger. I used my broken Vietnamese to respond, something like, "Vietnam good. I happy here." She smiled, patted my hand, said something else I didn't understand but felt in my chest. I thought about Frank then, my neighbor in Manchester, lying dead on his kitchen floor for 2 weeks before anyone noticed. I thought about how close I'd been to that. Not the dying we all die, but the not being noticed, the not mattering to anyone. The isolation so complete that your absence doesn't register. That night, I called Rachel. Proper video call, first time I'd done it since arriving. She answered, saw my face, and her expression changed. "Dad," she said, "you look different. You look good. You look younger." I laughed. "I feel younger. I feel alive, love. For the first time in years, I'm actually living." We talked for an hour. I showed her my apartment, the view from my balcony, walked her through the street with my phone camera showing her the vendors and the motorbikes and the life happening everywhere. She was worried, of course, about my health, my safety, whether I was being scammed, whether this was sustainable long-term, all valid concerns. But she could see it too, the change in me, the light that had come back on. My 3-month visa was expiring in 2 weeks. I needed to make a decision. Go home to Manchester, to the gray and the cold, and the isolation, and the slow waiting for death. Or stay here, extend my visa, commit to this mad adventure, see where it led. I thought about my flat in Wythenshawe, the damp, the cold, the silence, the spreadsheet tracking every pound, the loneliness so profound it had physical weight, the invisibility, the sense that my life was over, just going through motions until the inevitable end. Then I thought about Lan's coffee stall, about Teacher Gerald at the English cafe, about Mike and the Tuesday morning crew, about pho for breakfast, and the warm wind on my face, and the chaotic, beautiful aliveness of Ho Chi Minh City. I thought about having money left over at the end of the month, about eating fresh food, about being seen, being known, mattering to people. The decision was easier than it should have been. I wasn't going back. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I'd extend my visa, find a longer-term apartment, settle in properly. This wasn't a holiday anymore. This was my life now. Vietnam had given me back something I'd thought was gone forever. Purpose. Community. The feeling that there were still good days ahead, not just management of decline. I was 72 years old, and I'd just started living again. And if that wasn't worth staying for, I don't know what was. It's December now. 10 months since I landed at Tan Son Nhat Airport, terrified and sweating through my sensible travel clothes. 10 months since I took that leap into the unknown, desperate, and half convinced I was making the biggest mistake of my life. I'm writing this from my apartment in District 3, and I need to tell you what's happened, since not because it's dramatic, it isn't. There's no big climax, no moment where everything suddenly made sense. It's quieter than that. It's just that somewhere along the way, I stopped surviving and started living. And the difference is everything. I moved apartments in September. The service place in District 1 was lovely but touristy, a bit sterile, and I wanted something more local. Found a one-bedroom in District 3, residential area, proper Vietnamese neighborhood, £480 a month. Less than my council flat, and I've got a bedroom, a living area, a kitchen I actually use, a balcony with a view of real life instead of other tower blocks. My neighbors are Vietnamese families, and they've adopted me in that casual Vietnamese way, where you're suddenly part of the community without anyone making a fuss about it. My morning routine now would be unrecognizable to the Gerald who left Manchester. I wake at 5:30, no alarm needed anymore. My body just knows. I pull on shorts and a t-shirt, still strange, wearing shorts in December, but it's 30 degrees here, and humid even at dawn. Walk to Tao Dan Park, about 10 minutes from my apartment. There's a group of Vietnamese seniors who do Tai Chi there every morning, have done for years apparently. I started watching them in August, fascinated by the slow, deliberate movements, the focus, the way these elderly Vietnamese people moved with such grace and purpose. One morning, an old man beckoned me over. Didn't speak English, just gestured for me to join. So I did. Felt like an idiot, copying their movements, getting it all wrong, but they were patient. Corrected my form through demonstration, smiled when I improved, didn't judge when I wobbled or lost balance. I've been going every morning since. Can't say I'm any good at it, but I'm better than I was. And more importantly, I'm part of something. We finish around 6:30, and sometimes a few of us go for coffee after, sitting on those tiny plastic stools, communicating through broken Vietnamese and hand gestures, and the universal language of old people complaining about their joints. Breakfast is at my regular Com Tam place, Mrs. Riley. Bin stall. Com Tam is broken rice, usually with grilled pork, pickled vegetables, a fried egg. 45,000 dong, about £1.20. Mrs. Bin knows my order now, starts cooking when she sees me walking up. She calls me something in Vietnamese that Thuy told me roughly translates to Uncle British, or maybe English grandfather. She gives me extra portions sometimes, refuses to let me pay full price, treats me like family. Her grandson, maybe 7 years old, practices his English with me while I eat. Hello, Mr. Gerald. How are you today? I am fine, thank you. Pure memorization, no idea what he's saying, but his pride when I respond is beautiful. I still go to Lan's coffee stall most days, though I've learned to mix it up a bit, try other places. But Lan's is home base. She invited me to her grandson's birthday party in October. Proper Vietnamese family gathering, 3 generations, more food than seemed physically possible, karaoke that went until midnight. I was the only non-Vietnamese person there, and they treated me like an honored uncle. Wouldn't let me contribute money for food. I tried, kept trying, they kept refusing. Made me sing karaoke, which was mortifying, but also hilarious. I did, My Way, by Sinatra, badly, and they applauded like I was Elvis. Lan's daughter, who speaks decent English, told me her mother talks about me all the time, tells people about her British friend who comes for coffee every day, who's learning Vietnamese, who's trying so hard to fit in. The word she used was proud. Lan was proud of me. When was the last time anyone was proud of me? Couldn't remember. The expat group has become my anchor in a different way. We still meet every Tuesday, but now we do other things too. Mike organized a Christmas dinner for next week. Proper British Christmas dinner, turkey, and all the trimmings. Everyone bringing something. Partners and friends invited. 15 people coming, maybe more. Klaus is teaching me German swear words, which he thinks is hilarious. John's been helping me with my Vietnamese, which he speaks fluently now after 5 years, and a Vietnamese wife who won't let him be lazy about it. These men understand in a way my own children can't. They've lived it. The UK pension that doesn't stretch. The cold and the isolation. The feeling of being surplus to requirements in your own country. And they've found the same thing I have, that life doesn't end at 70. It just changes, and sometimes the changes are for the better if you're brave enough or desperate enough to let them happen. Healthcare was a concern before I came. Still is sometimes, if I'm honest. I'm 72, got high blood pressure, dodgy knees, the usual old man problems. But I found a GP near my apartment. Dr. Dwin, trained in Australia, speaks perfect English. First consultation was 200,000 dong, about £5.50. He was thorough, asked about my medical history, examined me properly, checked my blood pressure and heart and lungs, spent 30 minutes with me. 30 minutes. In Manchester, I got 10 minutes if I was lucky, 5 if the surgery was running behind, which it always was. He referred me to a local pharmacy where I get my blood pressure medication. Ramipril, 150,000 dong for a month's supply. 4 quid. I was paying £9.90 in the UK, and that was with NHS prescription charges. 4 quid for the same medication, same brand even. I needed dental work in November. 2 fillings, a proper clean, checkup. I've been putting it off in the UK because private dental work is extortionate, and NHS dentists are impossible to find. Here, I went to a modern clinic in District 1, all new equipment, English-speaking staff. They did everything in 2 appointments. Proper job, no pain, very professional. Total cost 2 million dong, £56, for 2 fillings and a cleaning. In Manchester, that would have been 300 quid minimum, probably more. I walked out of that clinic with my fixed teeth feeling like I'd won the lottery. The healthcare isn't perfect here. I know if something serious happens, really serious, I might need to go to Bangkok or Singapore or even back to the UK. The expat group has warned me about this, made sure I understand the limitations. But for day-to-day health, for managing chronic conditions, for the stuff that makes up 90% of healthcare needs, it's better here. Better access, better prices, better bedside manner even. Dr. Terstad. Nguyen treats me like a person, not a number in an overwhelmed system. That matters. That matters more than I realized it would. Money-wise, I'm doing something I haven't done in years. I'm saving, not much, just little bits, 30 or 40 pounds a month that doesn't get spent. It goes into a separate account. Emergency fund, rainy day money. I never thought I'd save again. Thought those days were over. Thought I'd spend every penny of my pension just staying alive until I died. But here, living comfortably, eating well, going out, doing things, I'm under budget. Consistently under budget. And the little savings account grows. It's not about the amount, it's about the possibility. The sense that I have options, breathing room, that I'm not teetering on the edge of disaster if something unexpected happens. But the real transformation, the thing that's actually saved me, isn't the money or the health care or the weather or the cheap food. It's the people. It's mattering to people. Being part of things. One volunteer at an English conversation cafe 3 days a week. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday afternoons, 3 hours each session. It's free for Vietnamese students, most of them university age, some older, all wanting to practice speaking English with native speakers. I'm Teacher Gerald there. They wait for me, save me a spot, bring me Vietnamese coffee, ask about my week. We talk about everything: their studies, their families, English grammar, British culture, my life in Manchester, what it's like being old, their dreams for the future, politics sometimes. Though I'm careful with that, music, food, everything. Though he is my star student, if I'm allowed to have favorites. 22, studying tourism management. Dreams of being a tour guide for international visitors. Her English is already good, nearly fluent, but she comes to practice confidence, to learn idioms and casual speech. She's adopted me as a grandfather figure, brings me snacks her mother made, remembers when I'm not feeling well, invites me to family events, texts me English questions at random hours. Teacher Gerald. What is the difference between fun and funny? My textbook is confusing. Teacher Gerald, my friends say, piece of cakes. But we are not talking about cake. What does mean? I love it. I love being useful, being someone's teacher Gerald, having someone care enough to text me questions. She invited me to her family's house for Mid-Autumn Festival in September, and now I'm invited to everything. Her father doesn't speak English, her mother speaks very little, but we communicate fine. They feed me, show me photos, involve me in family jokes through Thuy's translation. Her grandmother, 76 years old, Vietnamese through and through, no English at all. We've developed this beautiful friendship based entirely on smiles and gestures and the occasional word from Thuy. She's lived through the war, the reunification, poverty, the slow climb to stability, everything. We sit together at family gatherings, this Vietnamese grandmother and this British grandfather, and we don't need language. We understand each other in the way old people do. The knowing that life is hard and beautiful and short and precious, that family matters, that small kindnesses matter, that we're all just humans trying to get through. They invited me for Tet next year, Vietnamese New Year, the biggest holiday of the year. They want me there. Me, the British stranger who wandered into their lives through an English conversation cafe. Thoe said, her grandmother insisted, said I was family now. I cried when Thoe told me that. 72 years old, sitting in a cafe in District 3, crying because a Vietnamese family I'd known for 4 months considered me family. In Manchester, I didn't have that. My own children loved me, but didn't know what to do with me. Here, I was suddenly Uncle Gerald, Teacher Gerald, the British grandfather, part of something bigger than myself. The other students are similar. They bring their friends to meet me, their parents sometimes. One student, Minh, asked me to help him with his English presentation for university. Spent 3 evenings with him, working through his grammar, his pronunciation, his confidence. He aced it, came back the next week, beaming, brought me bom bao his mother made as thank you. These small connections, these moments of mattering, of being useful, of being seen, they add up. They accumulate into a life. I video called Rachel last week. She wanted to see my new apartment. Check, I was all right, do the dutiful daughter thing. I showed her around, walked her through the neighborhood on video, introduced her to Mrs. S. Bin at the breakfast stall who waved at the phone and said hello. Showed her the park where I do Tai Chi, the English cafe where I teach, the modern shopping mall 10 minutes away where I can get British products if I'm homesick, which I'm not really anymore. Rachel said, Dad, you sound happy. You look happy. I haven't seen you like this since Mum died. She was right. I am happy. Not ecstatic, not manic, just content. Settled. Like I've found a place that fits. Like I'm living a life that's actually mine instead of just enduring time until time runs out. She asked if I'm coming back for Christmas. I said no. Said I'm going to Mike's Christmas dinner here, that I've got plans, commitments, people expecting me. She was quiet for a moment, and I could see her processing it. That her father, who'd been so lost and alone and adrift, had built a new life on the other side of the world at 72. That I wasn't coming home because I was home. I'm glad, Dad, she finally said. I was worried about you for so long. You seemed so empty after Mum, like you'd given up. But now you've got this. You've got friends and students and community. You've got a life. I'm glad. We talked about her visiting, maybe next year, bringing the grandkids. They'd love Vietnam, she said. The food, the culture, meeting Teacher Gerald's students, seeing where Granddad lives now. I'd love that. To show them this place that saved me, this city that gave me back purpose and dignity and reasons to wake up in the morning. I thought about Frank a lot this week, my neighbor in Manchester who died alone on his kitchen floor, undiscovered for 2 weeks. I think about how close I came to that. Not the dying we all die, but the alone part. The not mattering to anyone enough that they'd notice your absence. The isolation so complete that your death is just a smell eventually detected, a problem for building management to solve. I could have been Frank. So easily could have been Frank. If I hadn't seen that YouTube video, if my sister hadn't mentioned her friend's brother in Thailand, if I hadn't been desperate enough or brave enough or reckless enough to book that ticket, one'd still be in that Withenshaw flat. Maybe I'd have made it to Christmas. Maybe another year. Spreadsheets and Tesco value beans and Sunday phone calls with my children who loved me but didn't know how to fix the unfixable. And then eventually, inevitably, I'd have been Frank. Alone on a floor somewhere, no one noticing, no one checking, just another old pensioner who'd outlived his usefulness. Vietnam didn't save me in some dramatic way. There was no moment of revelation, no crisis averted at the last second. It was quieter than that. Vietnam just gave me reasons to keep going. Small reasons, daily reasons. Land's smile when I arrive for coffee. Mrs. Bin's grandson practicing English. The Tai Chi group accepting me into their morning ritual. Though texting me grammar questions at midnight. Min bringing bombao from his mother. Doctor. Nguyen spending 30 minutes making sure my blood pressure is controlled. Mike organizing Christmas dinner and expecting me there. The security guard at my building asking how my day was. These tiny threads of connection, of mattering, of being seen and valued and part of something, they wove together into a life worth living. And at 72, that's everything. I wonder how many men like me are sitting in flats in Manchester right now, or Birmingham, or Newcastle, or anywhere in the UK. Pensioners living on the state pension that doesn't stretch. In cold flats they can't afford to heat properly, eating reduced-price ready meals, managing spreadsheets, managing decline, managing existence. Men who feel invisible, irrelevant, surplus to requirements. Men who are just waiting, though they might not admit it even to themselves. Waiting for it to be over because it's easier than fighting to make it better. I want them to know it's not too late. That's what I want most from writing this. For someone like me, someone who's given up or nearly given up, to read this and think, maybe I could do that. Maybe there's still something else. The numbers work. State pension is enough to live on here, comfortably, with money to spare. The visas are manageable, 6-month tourist visas, or you can get a temporary residence card if you're serious about staying. The healthcare is affordable and good. The food is incredible and cheap. The weather is warm. The cost of living is a fraction of the UK. All of that's true and important and makes it possible. But the real reason to come, the real reason it's worth the fear and the upheaval and the massive change, is the people. The sense that you matter again. That you're not just an old person taking up space and resources, but a teacher, a friend, a community member, someone with value beyond your pension contribution. The Vietnamese culture respects age in a way British culture has forgotten. They don't warehouse their elderly and wait for them to die. They integrate them, value them, listen to them. You're not less because you're old here. Sometimes you're more. I'm not saying it's perfect. It's not. I miss my children, wish I could see them more, wish they could visit more often. I miss certain foods, certain comforts, the familiarity of Britain. I miss understanding everything, speaking fluently, not having to work so hard at basic communication. There are frustrations, bureaucracy, occasional scams you have to watch for, pollution some days. The traffic is genuinely terrifying. The rainy season is miserable. Sometimes I'm lonely in a different way, the loneliness of being foreign, of never quite fully belonging, no matter how welcomed you are. But I'll take this loneliness over the Manchester loneliness any day. Because this loneliness has texture, context, possibility. That loneliness was just void. I'm 72 years old. I probably have 10 years left if I'm lucky. Maybe 15 if I'm very lucky and my heart holds out. That's not much time. But it's all I've got, and I refuse to spend it waiting to die in a cold flat where no one remembers my name. I'd rather spend it here, drinking coffee with Lam, teaching English to students who bring me snacks, doing Tai Chi badly with Vietnamese grandmothers, eating pho for breakfast, feeling the warm wind on my face, mattering to people, being part of something, living instead of just existing. Gerald Thompson, quantity surveyor from Manchester, learned something important at 72. It's never too late. Never too late to change, to try something new, to build a different life. The fear is real. The fear almost stopped me, nearly kept me trapped in that Withenshaw flat until I became frank. But on the other side of fear is possibility. And possibility, at any age, is worth pursuing. If you're reading this and you're trapped like I was, if you're managing decline instead of living, if you've given up because giving up seems easier than fighting, I'm asking you to reconsider. Look at the numbers. Do the research. Ask yourself honestly, what am I protecting by staying? Is this life worth clinging to? Or is there maybe, possibly, potentially, something better out there if you're brave enough to reach for it? I wasn't brave. I was desperate. But desperation got me on that plane, and everything that came after was just showing up and being open and letting Vietnam work its quiet magic. And now, 10 months later, I'm sitting on my balcony in District 3, watching the sunset paint the sky purple and gold, listening to the evening sounds of my neighborhood, and I'm grateful. Grateful I bought that ticket. Grateful I didn't let fear win. grateful for every small moment that's woven together into this unexpected, imperfect, beautiful life. There's still so much life left. At 72, there's still so much life left. You just have to be willing to go find it.